There we go. So welcome everybody. This is Artist Talk on Art. This is our Monday virtual open studios. This is our response to COVID-19. ATOA is a 501c3. We've been around for 45 years and usually do our talks on the Lower West Side. Recently we did it at 12 West 12th Street at the First Presbyterian Church. But during these times, since the middle of March, we've switched to a virtual platform, and in some ways there have been windfalls. It's easier for some people to come. Obviously, we don't have that direct interaction, but we're doing the best we can, and we have increased our programming because we do this weekly now. I just want to point out a few things. We do have a website, obviously a website, but we do have a link on it for our YouTube page. Our YouTube channel, I've loaded up, there were many loaded up, and I loaded up many more of the talks. You can view them at any time. If under YouTube, if in the website, you could see the link directly, but if you go to YouTube and type in Artist Talk on Art, you'll be able to see the channel. Click videos so you see all the videos. Use the headings right. Sometimes it'll only show 6, but once you click videos, you can see, I think there are 14 up now. So that's just a little update. And as well, next week, we have a special presentation. We have Danny Peralta and Tao Batiste will be speaking. They are artists that are part of an exhibition put on by Enfoco. It's an exhibition called Dos Mundos, Reconstructing Narratives. The focus is 12 artists that center stories at the fringe of public attention, hidden sanctuaries, subcultures, painful identities, faraway homes, spirituality, transcendence, broken promises, and all too easily ignored social ecologies. I had a talk with Danny and Tao in preparation for this, and this is going to be, as I feel all of our talks are, it's going to be a very exciting talk with a little different angle. Interestingly, they are in the same exhibit, but they're going to be coming from a very similar angle. And I urge you to come and hear the talk. I think you're going to like it. It will be a focused talk with just 2 artists presenting. Maybe a curator will step in as well. And then the following week, we'll continue with our regular sort of open format. And you'll see about once a month, we do mix something like that in. And I welcome you to reach out to your friends to see if they want to join and be a part, listen in or share, or just to spread the good word of Artist Talk on Art. I think we're doing a good thing. I've heard a lot of great things from people who have come to these talks. And I think, we've created a nice environment, and that's due to all of you. Like I say, every time Artist Talk on Art is about artists, you are artists, and you make this happen, and your presence is greatly appreciated. Our most valuable commodity in life is time, and you are giving your time to this organization, and you are sharing it with fellow artists. I am repetitive, but I can't say it enough. We all have our families, our husbands, well, definitely moms and dads. We've had them at some point, maybe husbands and kids. But there are other families that we're a part of. And the artist community, when I spoke with Danny and Tao, whose name I keep looking over to read, because names are not my best at remembering, right away, we synchronized. We shared a lot in terms of our past because we are artists. And so there is sort of a family of artists, a community it's hard to describe, it'd be hard to pencil down, but you know it when you talk to an artist and you synchronize and you can talk about certain things. So I want to say thank you for being part of that. I like to refer this as a sort of beehive community. Maybe the individual bees don't know their job, but the hive operates at a higher level. And this community of artists, I think, operates at a higher level. We'll hit some technical difficulties. We always do. That's an opportunity to take a break and we'll work it out. It's never really a problem. We all have come across real problems in life. So when we hit the little ones, they're speed bumps not to worry about, and we tend to resolve them. So I want to welcome you all again and thank you for coming. And we'll start off with Heloisa Pomfret. And Heloisa, share with us where you are, and then of course go in. You know, we do offer screen sharing. If you feel there's too much noise in your background, anybody can mute themselves. And of course, there are little buttons inside boxes where you can focus on Heloisa while she speaks. So thank you, Heloisa, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I think it's a nice opportunity to share the work with everybody. So hello, everybody. And I am in Michigan right now. And actually 30 minutes from Detroit, if you're familiar with Detroit and Michigan. I don't have much in my studio right now. As you see, I'm in my studio. But I have a website, and I would like to share my work through the website with you today. So I'm going to go to the share screen and make sure that I work this out. I don't see the website. I don't know the website. Just a second. I'm looking for my website.
Judy.
I think we all see the head of a helper tipping in there. That's
I
fine.
found the website. I found it, and I think now I'm going to share it.
Wow.
Yes. So can everybody see the website?
Yes.
Yes.
Lovely.
Yeah, I'm not very good in technology, so please bear with me. So I think I'm going to focus on my recent work because of the time, the amount of time available. So my work is inspired by, actually I'm interested in human behavior, the impulses, passion, aggression, and fright and flight. I'm not a psychologist, but I'm interested in the human behavior. So because of graphs, that graphs human behavior level of violence in cities, I decided to do a work based on graphs. So I created my canvases. This is oil bar on canvas. And the canvas are cut in the size of the graphs that I got images, excuse me, from the internet. It's 9 feet long and by 99 inches by 733 inches. They are stitched. I first stitched my pieces and then I primed them on the wall. I put like several layers of gesso and I start from the lightest colors, like the yellows, to the black. And then I scratch them with printmaking blades, like the palimpsest process. And this is a detail. So I put the reds, the yellows, and the blacks, and then it's scratch. And because of the timing involved, I cannot do, sometimes if it's that big, I cannot do all of them together. So I go in parts. This one is entitled Clarity. And like it says, 60 by 67 inches. And it was inspired by a process called Clarity that they do in labs. And they inject light in the brains of mouse. And they also put a mesh to hold all the elements together and to blanch out all the elements so that they can see the reaction of those mouse in the lab. And they inject the mouse with cocaine and give them shock so that they give pleasure and pain. And then they graph the reactions of the stress. And the outcome is findings to help them to produce medication for depression and anxiety in people. So those are experiments. So this is another piece from the same group, the same series, which is threshold. And it's a series based on liminal states. This is self-portraits. And so I graphed a piece of paper, and I graphed actually the profile of my head and 2 times life size. And then I projected on the wall. And then I cut and stitched again and scratched like in the normal process that I have. And I'm talking about liminal states because it's a state where you can have different readings for an image, for example, where they can look one particular image, but there is a point that they change and they have another reading. For example, this is one of the tools, the tools that they use for the process of clarity. I liked the shape of the tool, and I thought that I could have many readings from the shape of that particular tool. So I decided to project on my wall and the image, and then I copied that on the canvas, the outline, and I created a painting out of it. This is also in relation to the brain. It's a brain image that I manipulated, I cut, I stitched. And the red part, I don't know if you can see the cursor, is kind of 2.5 dimension. It's a piece of canvas that is cut in addition to the background, and it protrudes to the front. And so for me, it had different readings. Like I could read as the brain, and after manipulated, it looks like a mask or a headpiece of tribes. And this is also from the brain. It started with the brain, and then I cut and I stitched and manipulated to have other meanings and other readings. That's also starting from a brain shape, and that's from a brain slice. And it's cut and stitched. And I think this is the last one. And that is part of a group that I created also from a slice of a mouse brain. And then I wanted to make them evolving simultaneously and see where they would end up if I would keep working and working on them and let them evolve. So that is those are paintings, and those are, the next one are installations. I think it's loading. Oops. Oh. Yeah. This is an installation piece. This is the side view. So I'm going to go back to the front view. Okay. Those are slices of the brain, images of slices of the brain that I get from the internet. And I decided to make a landscape out of them. And they are particularly in the region of the hippocampus where the amygdala is, that gives those hormones of fright and flight, and they produce those impulses. So I'm focusing in that area. And I put some elements that are not so much in the brain from time to time, like I have here, a hand grenade, or in a different one, I have some road signs. Whoops. Yes, so these are images of the brain, and here you have a road sign that gives a different interpretation, a different reading. And now going back to the installations, I put slices of the brain again. They are paintings, oil, bar on canvas, and the other side I put acrylic paint inside of my ceramic pieces. And those are the ceramic pieces. And they are scratched with the same process that I do on the painting. I use some metal pieces, tools for ceramics that I can scratch, and use glaze on the inside, and outside I use oxides. Yeah. Oh, and one thing I forgot to say, to mention, is that the installations are produced with inner tubes from truck tires, because I'm in Detroit. And also is an analogy for the body, because the inner tubes are a bladder. They have identity, they have valves just like we have. So I thought it was a good analogy for the body. So I use those materials that I can play with some analogies that reflect the body and the mind, I mean the brain. And I'm interested also in the positive shapes and the negative shapes. So I always have the negative, which would be the leftover on the bottom of the installation here. And I think for probably my time, that's it. If somebody wants to browse on the website, you can. But I think for now, I think that's okay.
Very nice, Eloisa. I mean,
Thank
your installation work is very different than the first work you showed.
Mhm.
You've got a strong power when you mix your ceramics with your other work as well, and you know, you go abstract very quickly, but obviously in this image, it almost reads like Rorschach, some of these images, and you can sense that you're coming from slices of the brain and the neural networks, which we had another artist, I forget her name, but she presented and used octopus to show and used actual drawings not far from what you're doing in the middle here. Can you explain again why you're focusing on the hippocampus, and you know what you're trying to get at? And I think you get at it in a very sophisticated way, and the work sort of asks for somebody to open it up, because it doesn't directly reveal itself, which is totally fine. So I also have too much background noise and to have heard you exactly clearly, and I'm sure there's a lot of interest in what you have to say.
Okay, thank you. You asked me why I have the images of the hippocampus. I think over 15 years ago, I was wondering where, because I was interested in human impulses, human behavior, and I was wondering where those impulses come about. And so I started researching, and I found out through images of the internet and the books of neuroscientists that the impulses actually are produced in a gland called amygdala that's situated on the hippocampus, which is the most primitive area of the brain. And we share that with the animals. So they also react basically in those same basic ways. And so they produce the impulse of fright and flight, and aggression, and the other side of the coin, which would be the passions as well. And I was, when I was doing those researches, and I'm always looking for images, I thought that they were very beautiful. And I decided to utilize them to inspire, and in some instances, I appropriate and I transform because I really like the image. And I know that they are kind of very concrete, but I think that playing with multitudes, they veer into abstraction. And especially if they are mixed, double with themselves, or if they are paired with something else, they can take another reading. And I find it interesting when you can have many entrances or many readings in a piece, or you can transform it. And so
That's a frozen moment.
piece abs and very different than the installation, but with violent behavior I typically with.
Well, thank you. Your Zoom has frozen, Heloisa.
Did I lose connection?
That's better. That's better.
Okay. Yeah, so part of it is very definite, and part of it is more abstract, but I try to work with those two different pieces of information.
I do want to open to any questions. I mean, a big part of what we do here is everybody asks, comments, anything you like. I'll obviously always have a lot to say and talk about, but you don't want to hear me talk. So everybody's always welcome to sort of join in with any thought they have at any time. Starting now.
I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. Your work is very beautiful, by the way, and very complex, which I enjoy. Your first works, I know you explained it, but I didn't quite understand. You said you scratched, and there was black and there was yellow and different colors, red. So what did you scratch in order to get the different colors with the black background? Could you explain that a little bit, please?
Yes. I've primed first, right? And after primed, I put the yellows first because the yellow colors. And I use the yellows because they're more transparent, they are lighter. Yeah. And from the very light yellow, I go to the ochres, and some areas that I know that it's like painting on reverse. I know that I want to have red, I put red. And if I want blue, I would put blue. And then I go to the dark colors, like the amber and black. The last one is black, but I never use black, pure black. I like to have blues for depthness, for create depth. And then I scratch, but it has to be scratched almost right away because there is also the drying time. It's oil bar. Oil bar is oil mixed with wax.
Oh,
So if you wait too much,
yeah.
it's going to, the scratch is
Yeah.
going to accumulate differently.
Yes.
If you scratch, yeah, right away, or if you scratch 3 days from now, you're going to have a different texture. So you have to keep drying time in mind.
Okay, thank you. I understand now.
You're welcome. Yeah. And that's called the palimpsest process. It's an ancient process where parchment was very scarce. So the ancient, I think were Greek or Roman, they used to scratch the parchment to put messages. So there would be always leftover on the parchment of ancient or previous messages. And I like that because it talks about memory. And I wanted to have that part in the work because the hippocampus is also an area where memory is installed, where it's created. So it fits with the narrative of the work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi,
Roberta?
Heloisa. I love your work. It was really interesting. How long would it take you to do a piece? First the pottery and then the paintings that you had coming out of it, the 2 pieces. How long is the process?
Well, the pieces that I did that are installation with the ceramics is a little bit different than the pieces that I do on the wall. And the reason is I've been told that you cannot have a canvas painted in both sides of it. So one side I prime and I paint, but the back I could not put oil. So I had to call the paint store, you know, the art supply store, to find out which things go with what so that I don't have future problems. And they told me that it will rot if you put oil paint in both. So he said the way to paint both sides is with acrylic paint. So I use acrylic paint for that. So then you have to gauge, and it's fabric, right? So I do like 2 or 3 layers of acrylic paint on the back. So it depends on the weather, your environment, how long it's going to take to dry. And oil bar typically is faster, but when I paint small pieces, especially like that have no texture, it's probably the standard time for oil paint, maybe 2 days. So I think within a week I could have my pieces in canvas done. Now the ceramics a different story because I'm not a ceramicist. I work with ceramics. I love ceramics, but my training is in painting and drawing. But since I'm interdisciplinary, I like to put my hands in a lot of things. But yeah.
I will cut you off just a second. You are quite the ceramicist. All people who work in clay feel they can't say they're a ceramicist if they don't know how to throw on the wheel like a Korean or a Japanese artist, because it has such a rich history. But I saw your ceramics. It is quite evolved, and it is, you know, you bring your scratching technique from your painting that's in your technique in your ceramics, the way the glazing is going in. So you translate the process you like very smoothly, and the way you did your inside one way and the outside of the ceramics another, and the way you opened it up and did a mixed media work, that's quite advanced ceramics. It is hard for an artist to say I'm an artist, let alone for anyone in clay to say they're a ceramicist, and I know that personally, but go on. I just want to say you're quite the ceramicist.
Well, and I have to also add to that, as a ceramic artist, I really agree that the work is just beautiful, and really it's very powerful, the texture and the relationship between. I also enjoy doing a glaze on the interior, oxides on the exterior, so it enhances the texture versus the shine and the smooth on the interior, and it's really, the texture you achieved is really beautifully done.
Thank you so much.
And relates really beautifully to the two-dimensional work as well. So yeah, it's really good for you.
Thank you. But to respond the amount of time, it's hard to tell in the ceramics, because I don't work in a ceramic studio here in my home studio. I have to go to a community college to do that. And so it depends on the timing available, their environment to dry, and the availability for, putting the glaze and all the other things. But I would say the ceramics is variable time, especially because of the drying time too.
Well, your pieces are fabulous. I really enjoyed looking at them. I'm glad that you decided to come on to ATOA. We always need new faces, especially from Detroit. It's great. Thank you.
I enjoyed very much
And
being
Heloisa, oh, the woman Wendy who was just speaking to you is an extraordinary ceramics. I mean, extraordinary.
I know. I saw her work and I loved it.
Oh yeah, me too, me too.
Yes.
Well, I just have to say thank you for that. I don't think anyone's ever called me an extraordinary ceramic.
Oh,
so
I mean,
thank you.
Not just the regular ceramic pieces that's like porcelain, but your other pieces that you did, I guess they were more like almost like, I don't know, structures of some sort. I don't know what. They just blew me away. And I tried once on the pot, to do the wheel. It's impossible. So Eloise, I know what you mean about the wheel, doing a wheel, not knowing, working on a wheel.
No, it's not. And I tried only once and I couldn't keep the clay on the wheel. It would fly. So I don't know the wheel. I do coils. And I really love doing coiling. It's very meditative. So everything so far is coiling. One day I will try the wheel. Mm-hmm.
Or not.
Yes, Peg. Peg, undo you're on mute. There you go.
I'm unmuted. Yes. Thank you very much, Heloisa. I was really, I'm really fascinated by your paintings and what you just explained about how you create them, because it's an unearthing process, where you build up the layers and then you scratch through them to discover the original layers. I would imagine you use different pressures too, not to go all the way through. So it's like a history, of the, it tells a story.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You reminded me, I haven't thought of this for many years, but when I lived in Philadelphia, I became fascinated with old, I guess, stone and concrete walls around the city where they build up layers of moss and lichen and rust and different colors. And it would create this amazing painting of age. And this is what I was reminded of as you were presenting your work. And I haven't thought of that for a long time. So thank you. Yeah, I really like your work. It's really smart, very, very smart. Well, even though it has to do with the brain, it's, still smart. I wasn't punning on that.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you.
Listen, Eloisa, you mentioned something interesting. A lot of human action can be segmented into, is it fight, flight, or the third one is freeze. That's the traditional breakup. And you know, if you take those 3 words with you, you could apply it to probably every action you've ever done in your life, and you can see the world a little differently. And maybe it is somehow in the hippocampus the only choices we have. And that could apply to politics as well. We obviously have some fighters, you know, today, but it is an interesting way to look at life. It is. Are you familiar with the pineal gland?
Pineal gland? No.
It's some artists look into that. There's a big question in all those works from 2000 BC, you know, in the Met. What are they holding up? Is that an acorn? Is that a pineal gland? And there's often a thought that that gland is like the center of man. Without going into it, that's a whole discussion. But to your point, you're looking for, you know, you're pointing out we are animals. You're going to our historic roots, our first brain, so to speak. That's the brain that when dragonflies fly in a swarm, that's how they don't bump into each other. They use their earlier brain. When Michael Jordan sticks out his tongue when he was playing basketball, he's tapping in to that inner brain. And when a outfielder in baseball tracks a ball, he is not doing mathematical calculations. He's letting go to that deeper part, which is very smart. It's a very smart. So I certainly, your thoughts resonate with me, and they're very exciting. And it's typical of an artist's approach. You're looking for, like, where do we come from? What is motivating us? And who are we at a real root? What are we? And yes, we are like the other animals, because we are animals.
Right.
So thank you. Thank you very much. I think snaps and
you.
claps. That was a beautiful presentation. And I like the depth that you did. You went into it, you know, very nicely. I want to move to Peg Riley. And Peg, feel comfortable to talk as long as you like, and, you know, go into your work. We're a small group, and as you see, we do get a little deeper like this.
I'd like to listen to others. This is my first ATOA, so I would like to watch, but I'm also curious technically, how do you share the screen, you know, website and yourself? How do you do that on Zoom?
I could do that with you another time. You and I can, you can email, we can set up a time, and I'll just play with you on that. It's quite easy. If you want to do a quick try now, there's usually something that says screen share.
I see that downstairs there.
If you touch share screen, then you usually get some options, like, do you want to share from here, from there? And if you click the right one, I'm certainly happy for you to try now.
No, you know, what I'm going to do is I see it. I might get in touch with you and we can do a few minutes, but, you know, if I did, you know, when I do present, I have my website, so that would be the best way to, you know, talk about my work. So we'll do it some, I'll be here every week, and hopefully the 3 people I gave this address to will join us.
Okay. You know, actually, we'll move on to Jean Best. Jean had mentioned she wanted to present.
Oh, okay. Hi. Hi.
Where are you zooming in from, Jean?
So I can't see myself. Let me just fix this a minute. I live in.
They say you can never see yourself. That's the nature of life. We all have a fake image.
Yeah. I'm coming from Bedminster, New Jersey. And for one, I'm so appreciative of this group and the fact that it's Zoom, because if it wasn't for the Zoom, I wouldn't be part of the group. So they're calling it silver linings here. And so I've done watercolor forever, and now a year ago I started experimenting with doing acrylic pour. So I've been showing my samples, and I have a few now to show. I'm just going to hold them up. So here's one. you can see it. And what I'm showing tonight is, recently I did a large triptych, and acrylic pour is done always on a flat surface. And so I had a lot of drippings from my triptych. And I said, okay, I'm not going to waste that, and I'm going to do something with it. So I started scrounging, grabbing every single canvas I could find, and I pressed the canvas into the drippings and pulled it up as straight as I could. And I was delighted with the results that I saw. So I actually got 17 paintings out of the drippings. That's what I have tonight.
Am I right to say I see like floral imagery?
It kind of looks that way to me, like petals, but it's all experimental. None of it is, it's not even manipulated at all. It's just pressed and lifted.
So would you ever consider manipulating, like adding to it in a more intentional way, like using the drippings as inspiration to inspire a direction? I know, generally speaking, the pours you don't touch, but since these were kind of left over from the big pour, you know.
I could. I happen to really like those, so. And then this one was not a pressed. This was intentional.
You know, to your point about using your leftovers, like I said, I don't know Gene, but I know many artists and myself, even when I was done painting with my brushes, when I wipe off my brushes on paper towel, I consider that artwork. And I get this incredible composition that I would not get anywhere else. I know another artist who does something similar, and he calls it, was it save paint or something? And so it's a very common theme for artists to go ahead, use the leftovers. And, you know, we're not like making a statement about the environment and, you know, using it all, but we're being creative. We're realizing there's something there of value, and it speaks a lot. And it also gets you something that you can't get. So when you keep printing and printing, you know, you're getting things that you can't do intentionally. And you're getting like a series out of it. To what I said earlier, you don't have to necessarily come at it going for form, but if you do something generic enough, it will become bones or leaves or plants, because somehow nature works with a very minimal vocabulary. And if you're generic enough, you are going to hit those forms, because that's sort of all we have. And I like when that happens, as well as the other approach where you go very intentional. Again, art is not about the one right way. It's about the choice of way that you choose. And there are many viable ways, I think, to approach creating art.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure. Yeah, please.
Okay. So there are a lot of ways of working with poured acrylic. I work in acrylic, and if you're working flat and you're talking about lifting and shaking and doing things that move the poured acrylic around on the surface, and then some of it is dripping off the edges. Is that how you? Okay.
Yeah, that was the original painting.
Mm-hmm. So if you have a way of capturing that paint that's dripping off the edges in plastic bins or some sort of catch basin, one of the things that I use is I use a lot of small, like takeaway plastic things with lids.
Yes.
So I'm able to use and I buy them by the stack, you know,
Right.
and I'm able to use the material that I'm catching, or in my case, I don't really do poured per se, but I'm using a lot of spackle knife and I'm doing that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I build up a lot of paint suddenly, I'll take that and I'll wipe it into one of these jugs and I'll keep it off on the side. I'll cover it over to keep it wet, you know.
Right.
And then I may not use that for days, but I've set it aside. I've sort of recaptured it instead of just wiping it off on a rag and throwing that out.
Right. And so
So
when you,
that's how I'm retaining that paint to still use or to mix again.
right.
You know,
Yes. And so when you do that, do you mix all the colors so now it's a new color, one solid new color, or do you let the layers remain as separate colors in your
oh, you mean within a little pot of color.
Yeah.
Generally, I wouldn't be trying to mix it to the
Mhm.
point, to stir it to the point of creating another color. However, I do that too.
Yeah.
So, and I always have a lot of white around. I mean, I'm using white in tremendous volumes
Hmm.
of acrylic. I mean, literally, you know, many gallons. And so, when the white when the colors have been salvaged and go into these little pots on the side,
Hmm.
I will often add another color in there, or I'll add white in there to thin it out somewhat, or
Hmm.
to lighten it up. So, so those savings, those recaptured materials,
Yes.
become something that I can use either almost immediately, or many days later, or sometimes even weeks later.
Yeah, that's great. And I do that too. And I also sometimes let the drippings harden and don't recapture them, and then they're called skins.
Uh-huh,
And
right.
they are multiple colors, just like,
So then you glue that down on a surface, or
yeah, then I can make a new painting with the skins,
okay, all right,
apply them to a new canvas, like a wet canvas,
right, right.
all black or something like that.
Uh-huh.
But I am really enjoying just playing with the acrylic pour with all the different possibilities that show up for me. This is like really exciting, and I've been doing it for a year, and I still feel like I'm so raw. It's very raw for me, and I
Yeah.
love
Okay, I make a wild recommendation to you, which is I'm assuming it's not your Wi-Fi, but it's your camera.
my
And I
camera.
recommend spring for a 1080p camera, you know, like an accessory camera. And that way you'll have a much sharper resolution.
For our Zoom calls, are you saying?
Well, for anything you do online, but certainly for Zoom calls.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're a little blurred. You're just a little out of, a little blurred.
Oh.
It's low resolution is all.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
I thought she was being very spiritual and had a halo.
That's
Yeah.
very spiritual. Gene, I was thinking,
It's a lamp.
I know an artist who teaches painting. He had oil painting class, and his students, they would use these disposable palettes, the paper palette,
Yes.
and they would tear off the top sheet after class and put it in the big trash bin.
Yeah.
And he was into recycling. It just tore him up to see all this wasted paint.
Yes.
So he would take these pallets home, and he would make paintings with
Huh.
this, and they were these rich, amazing variety of color
Collages or
paintings, palette knife, brush, whatever.
no, but I mean, he was taking these paper sheets.
Yeah.
He was then gluing them down or pasting them or
Just take a palette knife and use the paint from the
right off the
Oh.
sheet.
and
Oh,
put it right on his canvas.
right.
His name is Farrell Brickhouse. Some people may
Yeah, I know of him. I know of him.
know him. That's
Yeah.
who I'm talking about. Just
Uh-huh.
amazing things with a recycling, in
Right.
mind. So yeah.
I was just reading or not just reading, just reading Orwell's Down and Out in Paris and London, which I had seen probably 40 years ago. I hadn't read it for a long time. Lawrence, hi. And in there, he talked, the Paris part is all about restaurants and working in them. The London part is his life as a bum, basically, a street person, and talking about how some of the bums sort of made the little money that they made by picking up cigarette butts on the street and then carefully emptying the residue tobacco that they could, glean from them into tins, and they'd be able to sell the tobacco to their fellow vagrants or whatever, right? And I see some level on which, finding and keeping the paint and other art materials and stretching them out is really a brilliant idea.
I worked at a place where we teach painting, and we use acrylic paints, and we have pumps. And when
Yeah.
you start, you've got to take a little push pin and stick
Right.
it in to pull out what we call the schnot. And sometimes you get like a little piece like this or a little longer. And of course, we save them, or I save them. And then one day I just took a very small canvas, I put white acrylic paint on it, and I dropped all these little, conical pieces of all different colors. And I gave it to my daughter, and she loves it. And the point is, I love it too. It like speaks of process. I would never make a work of art like that unless I played with the leftovers. And it's got all the conceptual and all the abstraction you'd want. And it's got all the randomness too, because I drop it, which, by the way, it's not so easy to drop things randomly. And Roberta asked a question earlier, how long does it take to make something? Van Gogh did 2 paintings in a day. He had to live 40 years to get to that point. And a really good artist can do a painting very quickly, and someone else can be a really good artist and he can take 9 months or 3 years to finish a work of art. Again, there's no rule about time in, and it's just, it all depends on who you are, really. I think it comes down to that.
Barry, in my earliest days in Soho, which was in the 1960s, I had a roommate in a loft, which was like a 7-story. We were on the 7th floor. We could see all the way north of Manhattan. But I never saw this guy do a painting. We were together for about a year in this loft. All the time he was there, he was gessoing canvases and canvas boards. And he was sanding them and re-gessoing them, and they weren't right, and he never put a any paint on any of these in the time that I knew him. But he must be the world's greatest gessoer.
Maybe he's selling them.
Yeah.
I have a similar story about music. I was a musician first. This is in the 70s. And there was a fellow that I worked with a lot, and he's still a very close friend 50 years later. But back then, he constantly reminded us that we have to upgrade our equipment because you can only sound as good as your equipment. You can only sound as good as your equipment. So we had the very best equipment in the world, but we never rehearsed. Similar to your stretched canvases all being perfect.
Yeah, right.
I do want to say thank you to all of you. I'm going to cut this meeting a little short. It was very nice to hear you present, Jean, and to hear you present as well, Heloisa. It was nice to go in depth and, of course, to hear everybody's comments. Let me say again, next week we have a unique presentation. Spread the word. We don't have our intern anymore, and she did a great job, and maybe that's why we have a little less of a turnout. So I'll ask you guys to help out, and I'll do my best to reach out to people. We will have Enfoco reaching out. We should have a nice group, but I think we shared nicely. We are a 501c3. If you'd like to contribute, there's information on the web. You can always reach out to me. We have many different ways. I can take credit card without going into it. It's your time that you give to us, and we appreciate that. I want to thank you all. It's always good to see you, and it is sort of a little stressful for me, but definitely a highlight of my week, and it carries me forward, as I sense it does many of you.
Just clarifying, we're doing this every Monday?
We do it every Monday. Reach out to your students, Lawrence. It's a great way for them to sort of practice doing a presentation. We let people speak from either 5 minutes to 30 minutes. We're very easygoing. It's not a college critique. That is not our goal here. It's a sharing ideas, and I think it works well. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to
Thank you. Thank you, Barry. Enjoy your time away.
Thank you, Wendy.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Okay.